Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root, where we dive deep into understanding and addressing root causes of chronic health issues so you can help and find healing inside and out, now and forever. Hello, and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root. I'm Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice, Trifecta Collective. Welcome to the podcast. So today we have a very, very, very special guest, Heather Cooan, who I'm going to read her bio in just a moment, but we are going to be talking about cancer today and all kinds of things related around cancer. And before I dive into Heather's official bio, I also just want to give a huge shout out to Heather. As you all know, my fiance and I went through a cancer experience last year. I posted anonymously multiple times in one of our groups, and Heather was so forthcoming with support and information. She didn't even know who was posting. And so I want to say a personal thank you because it was really helpful during a very, very stressful time. So just huge shout out. Thank you. Big heartfelt, thank you to you and everything that you do, all of the information that you're so willing to give and put out there, because it is incredibly stressful going through that, and it was such a bright light in our journey last year. So thank you personally, thank you. And excited to share. Yes, excited to share everything today. So just to give a little bit more background on Heather, she runs a business called Soil to Soul Nutrition. She is a double board certified integrative metabolic oncology nutrition consultant, functional medicine practitioner, transformational coach, and lived experience mentor. She supports individuals navigating cancer, autoimmunity, and complex chronic illness with evidence-based, trauma-informed strategies rooted in nutrition, lifestyle, nervous system regulation, daily habit change, and environmental design. Informed by her own healing journey, including vulvar cancer, Hashimoto's, Lynch's sclerosis, and an ongoing diagnosis of complex PTSD, Heather's work emphasizes bio-individuality, personal agency, and empowerment through lab and data-driven care. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Megan. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Excited to dive into all of this. I've got a very personal interest in this. So I'm personally very interested in so much of this. And, just with our experience last year, I have a lot of thoughts and questions.
I'm sure you learned a lot.
So much. But I really want to start, how did you, obviously I just read your bio, but what brought you into this space? How'd you get involved in the oncology space and kind of chronic health issue space to begin with?
Yeah. So as you just said, I'm a double tender autoimmune flower with the Hashimoto's and the LS. And I was kind of in the naturopathic realm. When I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I think it was 2005. Forgive my trauma brain. Chronology is not always my strong suit, but I think it was 2005-ish. And it was back when Stop the Thyroid Madness was out. Do you remember that book?
I do. Yeah.
It was a clunky little website and a super fiery grassroots movement around how the conventional endocrinologists do not understand the thyroid, and they really don't understand the autoimmune components of thyroid function. And so I was on a vacation with a friend they were twins. And so we were visiting his brother in Boston for their birthday. And I ended up with a bad flu and I ended up hospitalized. I had a heart rate of 210 and a fever of 105, 10, it was pretty high.
Yeah.
And in the process of getting hospitalized for the flu, we found out that my thyroid was low. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. So get home after all of that and go and follow up with a nurse practitioner. And she was like, it's not a big deal. If you want to take medication, you can. It'll probably help you with weight loss and maybe a little energy. But otherwise, she didn't seem to think it was a big deal at all. And up until that point, I didn't have any diagnoses. Now, mind you, absence of diagnoses is not presence of health, right? Clip that. There you go. I can't emphasize that enough. But I didn't know, like, I don't think I had even had my blood drawn. I was like, how old was I in 2005? I was born in 1980. So what is that? 25, 35, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, whatever. And so she gave me a prescription for Synthroid, which is the standard medication that the MDs give you. And I was like, okay, I'll try it. Made me nuts, like totally crazy. Like imagine really, really terrible PMS symptoms, but 24/7. Totally messed me up. And so I
Yeah.
was like, well, I'm not taking this. So I just didn't take anything. And several years passed and my hair started to fall out and I continued to gain weight and I started to lose my vision and my memory and the list just goes on. And then finally I found Stop the Thyroid Madness and picked up at naturopath and did all of that. So when I was diagnosed with cancer, I was kind of already in the space, but the learning I figured out with my thyroid, I also figured out with cancer when I went through that adventure. And I actually chose to refuse conventional treatments in a lot of ways for
Okay.
myself.
Yeah.
So we're going to get real personal. Your listeners and I are going to be BFFs. Cancer of the vulva, for those who don't know what a vulva is, because I've had nurses ask me what a vulva is. External female genitalia. The tumor that ended up in my vulva was very near my clitoris. And the first line of treatment for this type of cancer is surgery. And so they wanted to remove all the cancerous tissue they could, which in my case would include my entire clitoris. And I was like, what? I was 37 at the time. And I was like, I don't know what kind of like feminine identity crisis I'm going to have, like, let alone sexual dysfunction, relationship. Like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, no, that doesn't work. And I negotiated with my surgeon to go ahead and remove as much of the cancerous tissue as they could, but leave me intact. And then when pathology came back, 3 out of 4 sides of the sample that were removed still had cancerous tissue. When they remove cancer, they want to cut into the good tissue. It's kind of like cutting the mold off the cheese. They want to get into the good stuff to get all of it as much as they can. And so my choices from the medical team were second surgery, let me take whatever I need to take in order to get it all, or 35 rounds of radiation, 35 zaps. So it would have been 35 every single day, skipping weekends for 35 sessions in a row to the lower half of my body, plus a low dose chemotherapy in order to address what was left in the body. And when I sat down with the radiation oncologist, I was appalled. He pulled out his sheet of paper and it was all of the side effects. And he's like, these are the short term, these are the long term. And he's like, this is what's absolutely going to happen. And he started circling. He's like, fiery diarrhea, 2nd-degree burns, 3rd-degree burns, like incontinence potentially, probably medically induced menopause. Like he just keeps going down. He goes, okay, now turn over the sheet. This is what could also happen. And it was like burning my intestines together, losing my bladder, losing my rectum, like, and then like there's all like the elasticity in the stuff was on the first page that absolutely would happen. Wouldn't be able to self lubricate, wouldn't be able to stretch. So penetrative sex would have been a problem anyway. Loss of sensation to the clitoris anyway. It was like he basically looked me in the eye and he said, quote unquote, I'm so sorry that your options are shitty and shittier. He was trying to get me to accept the second surgery. He was trying to talk me into it. He's like, if I had a choice, I would go get another surgery. Like, don't put yourself through this if you don't have to. And I was like, well, I don't like either of those options. And so I went and I talked to my naturopath who was helping me with my thyroid. And she said, you know what? The type of cancer you have, because it was squamous cell, which is just the type of skin that was affected. She said, it's actually kind of a weak cancer. And it does like to metastasize, but it also responds really well to alternative therapies. And I was like, okay, then. So she referred me to a clinic here in Phoenix, and that's what I did. But in order for those alternative therapies to work, I really credit a complete overhaul of my diet, my lifestyle, quitting my executive, high-powered, scary job, doing all of the foundational work to allow my systems to come back in line and accept those treatments. And so in that process, I learned about the business of cancer. I learned about how many tools are in the toolbox that people don't know about. I learned about how the standard of care tools can actually be flexible. You can negotiate lower doses and different strengths of medications and different combinations. And it really is not a situation where I don't know, you know, so I'm just going to follow your instructions. There's so much more that you can do to help yourself and really take part and like ownership over your care. And that's what I just decided. You know what? I got to tell everybody. And it turns out I'm pretty good at puzzles and data because I come from a marketing executive background. And so that's what I do now. And I went back to school and opened what was just Heather Cooan to start. Now is Soil to Soul. I have a team behind me. And last I looked, there were like 400 people that I had worked with cancer over the last. So I was diagnosed in 2017, cancer-free, by the way, as of February 2018. So I just was at 8 years this past February. And so I basically hung my shingle while I was in the IV chair, like making my new website. And I just kind of went from there. So it has been an adventure. I found Dr. Nasha and started studying intensely under her along with her docs. It's a group effort what we do. We obviously not physicians, so we don't consult on treatments, but we do all of the foundations to enable those treatments to work. And a huge piece of that, people may be surprised to hear, is the mental and emotional terrain, the nervous system, and a lot of trauma, which turns out to be the core of my onion, my disease process. So in a nutshell, that's how I got here.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. And what an incredible story. Oh my goodness. We, we, fortunately, we didn't have to do radiation. My fiance did not have to do radiation, but we talked about it at first and if that was going to be a possibility. And we were both like, nope, nope. We were open to other alternatives, and radiation is not one of those things. And just,
Yeah.
those laundry list of side effects. It's crazy. And I mean, I can't 35 rounds, like can't even imagine that.
Yeah. So
Goodness.
my oncologist wasn't very informative. And I saw the man for a total of like 15 minutes minus the time I was under. And my radiation oncologist was like, so here's what happened in your surgery. And he was like, he
Yeah.
basically cut through the tumor. And so they left like a part of, and it wasn't just like edges, it was a
Yeah.
significant amount. And he's like, so in order to get rid of this with radiation, it's got to be pretty intense. And I
Yeah.
was like, holy crap. It was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild. So, like let's talk about root causes of cancer because, I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of information about this, largely from Dr. Winters.
Mhm.
And I, obviously we talked about before we started recording, like I've read her book and everything like that. But let's talk, what are the root causes? And I know this is also a big question to ask because there are many of them. But let's start to take through some of these. Like what are big picture, like what are root causes of cancer? What causes this?
Totally, totally. So let's first talk about what cancer is.
Yeah, great.
People don't seem to realize, a lot of my clients seem to feel like there's this like thing that's growing in them, like a parasite or an other being, and they must eject it from the building. And I understand that fear, but cancer is our own cells that have gone bonkers,
Yeah.
essentially. And it's a very complicated, complex illness. It has a lot of inputs, but according to the American Cancer Society, 95% of cancers are caused by lifestyle and nutrition. That's crazy. 95. We used to
Crazy.
think that cancer was a genetic illness, or it was
Yeah.
like just bad luck and you just get it. But no, it's a product. Basically, I love what Dr. Nasha says. She says your biography becomes your biology. And she's exactly right. So it's essentially an amalgamation of everything that you, your mind, body, heart, and soul have been through up until this point. And that includes what you went through when you were inside mom as an egg in her ovaries, and when you were inside mom's ovaries inside grandma's womb when mom was 6 weeks old. So genetics are a piece here, and epigenetics going back multiple generations. So in my definition of what cancer is, that's what it is. It's everything we've been through. And so if we unpack what the heck that actually means, it's all of the stress and the exposures, all of the external inputs. because we're open systems. So we're influenced by the food we eat, by the air we breathe, by the water we drink, by the relationships we enter into, by the psychological programs that run in our background, in our subconscious, by, pesticides and flea and tick dips for your cat and dog, and grandparents that survived World War II, or slavery in the lineage, or whatever it might be. It's all of these things. And it's the amalgamation of that are the root causes, in my opinion, of cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, 5%, like radiation exposure, asbestos exposure, like that's true. There are some genetic cancers as well, but it's a very small portion.
Yeah. What are some of the big, like mostly genetic type of cancers?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know if I have an answer to that question. So the biggest one that always comes up is BRCA positive cancers.
Okay.
But BRCA is not, it's not a predisposition or like a, like I'm thinking like crystal ball. It's not like Swabinanda didn't say you're going to get cancer. Like that's not what BRCA is. BRCA is a genetic mutation that makes it a little bit more difficult for you to repair your DNA. And so you have to live a little bit more intentionally with BRCA in terms of making sure you have a clean environment, clean water, clean food, clean air, stress mitigation, stress reduction, positive relationships, all of these things. But there are some other genetic cancers, like Lynch syndrome is one that I'm aware of. And I'm actually not sure what all of the others are. I know there aren't very many. I don't run into them very often. You'd be surprised at how many people are actually BRCA positive. It's not very many.
Okay. That's good to know. So if we're looking at, I mean, I think of like some of the big ones that I think of as genetic. I mean, I hear all the time, especially because we mostly work with women, breast cancers, ovarian cancers, I think like colorectal cancers. Like, are those mostly not genetic and more of this like big picture, environmental, all of these other factors kind of coming into this?
So Dr. Nasha would say they're environmental. I know she would. But the ovarian cancer, the breast cancers are the cancers that are typically associated with BRCA. And so that's where that kind of genetic component comes in. And then the colorectal cancers, there are some not. So colorectal cancer is more like a bucket. There's multiple different types of colorectal cancer, and some of them are genetic. I remember a case I had of a gal that did have a genetic version, and I believe that might have been a Lynch case, actually, a Lynch syndrome genetic case. But yeah, there are some that are genetic in that capacity there. I wouldn't consider the ovarian or the breast because it's also not the same. Mom had it, grandma had it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's genetic because the other thing that runs in families is daily habits and trauma and how we eat and those family recipes that get passed down. And like every Thanksgiving, my mom brings something called ambrosia to the table. Like this kind of stuff. This kind of stuff is also runs in families. So it's not as simple as genetic. But there's another piece to genetics as well. So something that I use in my practice is I look at human genetics, because what we're talking about now, BRCA, that's oncogenetics, like tumor genetics. But that's something called like nutrigenomics, is like, do you have genes that allow you to hang on to vitamin D? Do you have genes that allow you to convert beta carotene to vitamin A? These two nutrients are super important for your surveillance system, your immune system. Do you have genetics that allow you to run detoxification correctly in terms of like making toxins water soluble, binding them, moving them out through the colon, these kinds of things. So there's multiple different types of genetics kind of wound up in here. And so what I find more often is in a lineage where mom and grandma and great grandma had breast cancer, I oftentimes see like, well, there's a vitamin D gene and there's a toxin gene, and that toxin gene doesn't allow you to let go of estrogen. So estrogen recycles and becomes harmful and damages your DNA. And you also have methylation SNPs like MTHFR. Methylation is how you repair your DNA. And so I put together this puzzle and they're like, oh, we were always wondering why this was happening, but we don't have BRCA. So it's different. It's a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we're looking at big picture, let's talk nutrition specifically first. Like nutritionally, if someone maybe has a family history of cancer and was like, I want to make some shifts and changes. Big picture, kind of what should this look like for me?
I love this question. So this is a prevention question,
Uh-huh.
which is literally the only cure for cancer is to not get it in the
Yeah.
first place. All right. So number one, my recommendation is to scrub every seed oil you can find out of your diet entirely. If you're a big nerd like me and Megan, you can pick up a book called Dark Calories from Kate Shanahan, which goes through all of the information about seed oils and why they are problematic. When I'm talking about seed oils, I'm talking about vegetable oils, corn oil, peanut oil, soybean oil, cottonseed oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, like all of these things that are made in a um, you got to squeeze it with a machine. Like it's not an oil that you can make at home. It doesn't come from something that's naturally oily. And the reason that these are problematic is because they oxidize very easily, because a lot of them are a type of fat called the polyunsaturated fat, which is delicate. And what I learned reading Dark Calories is that these would actually smell like rancid fish if they weren't deodorized in the processing process. And so you can imagine what kind of a number that's doing on our body, because we are made of fat. Like that's what our cell walls are made of. So if our cell walls are made of rancid fats that have come from a machine, oh my gosh, are we like, how is that cell going to weather toxins in the environment? And like when we go out and have alcohol on New Year's Eve and like all of these pieces to the puzzle. So
Yeah.
number one, good, healthy fats that come from things that are naturally oily, because you want to be made of good fats. And you can tell the difference if you're having a lot of seed oils and you're sensitive to the sun and you sunburn really easy, and then you switch over to a non-seed oil fat diet and you start using things like butter and tallow and olive oil, my favorite, and all of these guys, pretty soon you can withstand more time in the sun and you don't burn as easy. It's night and day. So number one, get rid of seed oils. That'd be the number one thing. Second, we got to get that blood sugar balanced. So one of the biggest pieces, and because I work in Naisha's orbit, people have a tendency to reduce her work to just keto for cancer, which is not at all what she's doing.
Yeah.
Naisha is looking at the entire terrain, so the entire soil that the disease could have taken root in. And that means looking at anything and everything that's putting stress on the cell itself, but more importantly, the engine in the cell, which is called the mitochondria. And so if we are not able to manage the amount of sugar in our blood and we have too much sugar that builds up, then our organs end up basically candy coated. So it's called glycation, and your blood gets thick and sticky and sweet, and you get candy coated, and those organs have a hard time moving. The blood also gets thick and sticky, and we're not hydrated, and we're not detoxing, and it just kind of is a cascade from there. And typically, the pancreas is overproducing insulin to try and handle that sugar. And when that happens and insulin is chronically high, that's driving inflammation. It's also kicking up growth factors. So insulin growth factor 1 is something we watch in the blood very closely because it's a growth factor. And when your insulin is high, and it's actually linked with metastatic disease and breast cancer. So it's one that we definitely want to watch and be careful of. To get that insulin, that blood sugar handling situated. I'm sure you've talked a lot about blood sugar with your listeners.
So much. Yeah. And we work a lot with mold, and almost everyone with mold and mycotoxin issues has blood sugar dysregulation issues. So, yeah, all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That inflammatory cascade is a big, big deal.
Yeah.
And then since you work with a lot of women, that whole insulin resistance picture cascades down the endocrine system. And so we end up with estrogen dominance or not enough progesterone or too much estrogen, or like the metabolism of the hormones is a little bit wacky, which can be DNA damaging, all of those pieces. So first, seed oils. Second, get your blood sugar sorted. Third, get your anything in, on, or around the body that is toxic needs to be addressed. That means anything you put on your skin, anything you're eating, so sourcing your food well, the relationships you're entering into, the work that you're entering into. We spend so much time at work. If that's a toxic workplace, that's a toxin that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Or better yet, if you don't have purpose or meaning in your life, that's a toxin that needs to be addressed. If you're not happy in your marriage, or you're hanging on to a relationship with mom and it's not additive because she can't get her ish together, like whatever it is, or you just don't match. Anything in, on, or around the body that is toxic or detracting to you. Like we want to fill that cup, especially us ladies, because we are trained to take on the whole world's problems and set ourselves aside.
All the
So,
time, superwoman. Yeah, I just
yeah,
recorded another podcast saying, like, women, we cannot be superwoman. It is not healthy for us. It is not good. We're not built to do everything and everything. Even if we can, we should not be
correct.
doing it because it's not good. It's not good for
Yes,
our health overall.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So those are
Yeah.
my top 3: seed oils, blood
Okay.
sugar, and toxins in every single form.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. We talk a lot about all of those things already.
Good.
So
We're right on track. Love
perfect.
it.
Yeah. Good to
Everybody's
know that.
following you at the head of the game.
Love it. Love it. That's also confirmation for me. Be like, we are also trying to prevent cancer as we're going through and doing this work with clients. So great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Mold, man, that's a big one. Simply because of the inflammatory cascade. I see a lot of brain cancer cases that also have mold alongside them because of the
Interesting.
neuroexcitatory
Yeah.
inflammation that happens with mold. So that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Super interesting. I'm not surprised at all by that
Yeah.
as well. So yeah. So we get this question a lot, and I'm like, I'm not the expert. I do not know for out, but I'm curious your take on this. So we get a lot of questions about obviously women, perimenopause, HRT, hormonal support when it comes to cancer. Would love to chat about it and just get your perspective and more information on that. Like, what does that look like? Maybe we start big picture and then I can ask some more detailed questions along the way.
No, this is a really hot topic, and it's a really
Yeah.
controversial topic right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those things that Dr. Nasha is staunch about, and it's a hill that she will die on, and she's one of the last remaining people who will die on that hill. She's very emphatically anti-HRT unless the entire terrain has been optimized to the hill first. And the reason for that is because with estrogen specifically, and remember testosterone can aromatize into estrogen, we are concerned with the way that it's metabolized. And so there are 3 pathways in which the things get metabolized. You have your 2-OH, your 4-OH, and your 16-OH. Now, 2-OH is like our good, healthy sun shines down that pathway. It's more protective. And so if you're healthy, stress has been managed, insulin has been managed, all of these things, no seed oils, then awesome. You're probably metabolizing down that 2-OH and a little bit of additional, not restoring back to fertile times like some docs are doing, but, giving a little bit of a whisper so that our bones are protected, our brain is protected, these kinds of things. Maybe that's not a problem. Now, if you've had history of a hormone positive or hormone sensitive cancer, I don't know that I would go there. There's a trend right now of some doctors who are treating breast cancers with HRT. And I think it's very dangerous business because I'm keeping track of little tallies, post it up here. I've had 6 cases now of women who have had estrogen positive breast cancer. I had 1 ovarian, but mostly breast cancer. And they're like ways out, like in remission, no sign of cancer for like 10 plus years. They start HRT and within 1 year they have a recurrence, and it's a very aggressive recurrence. One woman had Mets to the neck and she was in really big trouble. And I haven't seen her for a while, and I sometimes have to go look for obituaries with my clients when they disappear. So just because, 6. And they all within a year of starting HRT after having been clear. That's concerning to me. And so I don't know yet that we have enough information to really say that this is a good idea. So I would just be cautious if I had an estrogen positive cancer and I had a doctor that was trying to prescribe me HRT. I would just be very careful. I would first instead go visit Dr. Mindy Peltz and go through her menopause reset and go through her stuff to see if you could, in a lifestyle capacity, get those hormones to kind of chill out, if you will. Perimenopause, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
So I should say that. But that's kind of where we're at. Like Naisha's one extreme, don't do it because you don't know how you're metabolizing. And the other is actually treating. Now, those other two pathways that I didn't talk about, 4-OH is the pathway that can produce DNA damaging quinones. So if your insulin is off or whatever, and you're pushing a lot down that pathway and we add more into the system, that's just more DNA damage and can be a risk. And then 16-OH, that's the growth pathway. So when you did have hormones, if you were like throwing cysts or fibroids or you had dense breasts or like any of these things, you may see like you may be pushing more down 16-OH and things are growing. So if there's a cancer process in there, we don't want it to grow with 16-OH. It's delicate territory. And so what Mindy Pelt's process does is it really optimizes that estrogen metabolism from a lifestyle and nutrition perspective. She utilizes strategic fasting. She utilizes calming the nervous system, adding oxytocin, chilling out with the cortisol, the stress hormone. So that's what I know about HRT. It's very controversial.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you guys run like a Dutch test or anything like that, like taking a deeper look at some of these pathways, either as like during treatment or as a preventative kind of piece to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work in a team, like tandem capacity. So it's someone from my team and then typically a physician that is trained by Dr. Naisha as well. And those physicians will often run a Dutch, always in the case of ovarian, breast, well, any kind of gynecological cancer, breast cancer, as well as prostate cancer, because prostate cancer is in the medical literature testosterone driven. But remember, testosterone aromatizes into estrogen. More often than not, we find we run a Dutch, it's actually estrogen driven prostate cancer, not testosterone. And so we can do some stuff in the lifestyle and nutrition instead of blocking the testosterone, right? So those physicians help with those conversations. But yeah, we run a lot of Dutch to look at. That's the only test I know of that actually, well, I guess there's one more that gives you the breakdown of the metabolism for hormones.
Yeah, that's the one I'm most familiar with, and we often use in our practice, and always talk about these pathways when we go over the results and all that kind of stuff. And like, these are the one you really want, and these are the two that like, ooh, little borderline. We want to do some work around this, and what does this really look like from a picture perspective? So, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Yep. And it's even problematic, like even if you don't have, like if you have menopausal levels of hormones, but then you get down to the metabolism and you got more running through like the DNA damaging pathway, that's really important for you to know before you go look at HRT, or if you have any kind of family history of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, these kinds of things in your history. The more you know, it really is what it is.
Yeah, for sure. We're not a prescribing practice, so we always refer out for HRT if someone's interested in that. But we love to run a Dutch test first before even like making a decision or supporting in any decision like that for that exact reason.
100%. And I would actually encourage anybody who's on HRT to have a Dutch run at least annually, preferably every 6 months, till you get a handle on how your body's processing those hormones.
Yeah, for sure. Now let's talk about some other. I've read parasites being a big root cause of cancer. I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback on that. What does that look like? What do you see with that? Is that true? Is it totally false? Like where does that kind of land for you?
Well, you might be surprised. I don't run into parasites very often at all.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
They are a stressor on the system, both as an endogenous, as an internal source of toxins because of what they produce, histamine and whatnot. And they just tear up the place where they are. So if it's a liver fluke, it's doing damage to the liver. If it's in the actual gut or the like worms in the intestines, it's tearing those up. And they have a tendency to have friends. So if you have parasite, you probably have overgrowth of candida, and that's more internal source of toxins, and they can be a contributing factor for sure if they're there. I just don't run into them very often.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. Yeah, we do a lot of work around parasite overgrowth, and around all kinds of gut overgrowth. So yeah, I was always just curious, because that was one thought we had with my fiance. It's like, oh, you have a parasite pattern. Yeah. And we've done some work since. around overall gut health and parasites specifically, and just to keep that terrain in a good place.
Absolutely. And you got to be a little bit careful when you're in an active cancering process and you're looking at doing something like a parasite eradication protocol or even a gut rebalancing protocol.
Yeah.
Simply because those hallmarks of cancer, the inflammation, the oxidative stress, these things can be inflamed or like kicked up even more as you're working on removing those things from the body. And so we have to kind of watch the terrain really closely and figure out perfect timing and pulsing. And sometimes we have to do additional protective measures. But sometimes things like binders that we would typically use, we can't do with treatments like chemotherapy and targeted drugs. And so there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle when you're looking at the gut within the context of oncology.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm curious, like, let's say someone is going through active treatment, whether that's chemo, whether that's and or radiation, which from my understanding, surgery, I think would be like the big three that I'm familiar with from a treatment standpoint. Like, what are ways to support the body if someone chooses to gets diagnosed, is going through one or multiple of those treatment options? Like, what can other support kind of look like?
Yeah, so this is kind of a big question actually. So there's a nutritional support, obviously. So if we're dealing with anything that is tissue damaging, like typically radiation or surgery, then we're doing a lot more protein. We're doing a lot more foods that are high in vitamin C, which is the building block of collagen to encourage tissue repair. We're doing a lot of rest, calm, hydrate, breathe. Doing a lot of that to allow tissue healing to be online, and so the nervous system has to be calm. Doing a lot of that stuff. And then there's also the alternative toolbox. So a lot of the physicians that we work with may come to the table with some complementary, treatments, complementary tools. So I see them use low-dose naltrexone a lot, which is an immunomodulatory prescription drug. Naltrexone in the larger doses was actually put out on the market to help with opioid addiction because it binds to the opioid receptors. But they found in teeny tiny microdoses, it actually causes a norepinephrine spike or like a surge of the good stuff while you're sleeping, and it kind of resets the immune system. Because we have Th1 and Th2, and you might help me remember which is which. I can never remember which is which. But if we tilt too far to one side, we end up with cancer. If we tilt too far to the other side, we end up with autoimmunity. And so we want to be even in the balance of the immune system. It's not uncommon if you don't have autoimmunity going into cancer, you could end up with it coming out because of the tools are pretty damaging to the immune system. So I see a low-dose naltrexone used quite a bit. Sometimes they will come to the table with something like mistletoe, which is the regular mistletoe that we kiss under the Christmas, mistletoe in the hallway. But it's really high in lectins, which are irritating, but they can kick up the immune system if the immune system is like laying down on its job and not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And so I see mistletoe used alongside chemotherapy and some of these other things to help potentiate that therapy. Sometimes they will prescribe fasting. So there is literature around radiation specifically, and some starting to come out about chemotherapy, where if there's too much insulin in the way, it actually protects the cancer cells from the radiation therapy itself. And so strategic fasting around the ZAPs, or maybe ketones, exogenous ketones and things around the ZAPs can both help the healthy mitochondria and produce more mitochondria, but then also get insulin out of the way so that those therapies can work a little bit better. And a lot of those ketones are used to recondition the gut, right? Because beta hydroxybutyrate is good for our beneficial bacteria as a food. Also available in butter. As you can tell, I'm a big fan of fat in the diet. What else do we do? We have to be very careful with things like sauna and red light around some of this stuff. Sauna is the preferred detoxification methodology whenever we've got active cancering because it's really gentle. As long as we're not going ham, it's like one drop of sweat at a time. But things like chemotherapy, if you apply heat, that can bring the toxins to the top of the skin, which can cause a nasty rash. So they will provide timing and recommendations and temperatures around things like that. Same with red light therapy. How else are we supporting the body? Hydration is a huge piece of this puzzle. For those who are not aware, hydration is two pieces. It's the liquid. People understand the water part, and that water needs to be filtered and clean, because if we think about our water system, if you're on city water, that water gets cleaned and then put back in the environment. And there's only so much water to go around. So if you think about how the water you drink has been through other bodies, we want that stuff filtered.
Yeah. Hardcore.
And then the other piece of hydration is the minerals. So in order for it to get pushed into the cells, we need the salt, the potassium, the magnesium. So hydration is a really big piece. What else? We got to talk about sleep. Sleep is a huge piece to this puzzle, and so is rest. And I will say that sleep and rest are two different things. So sleep is obvious, sleep. But rest is connection, curiosity, meaning, purpose. Like, this is showing up in a way that fills your cup in the world. And so when we're going through chemotherapy, radiation, any of these things, it can be really lonely, really isolating, and really difficult. So it's good to try and plug in wherever you can to your community, experience joy, even if it's just sitting outside in the sun and chatting on the phone with a friend, or sitting outside in the sun and watching the birds in the bird feeder. Like, whatever you've got the capacity for, that's beneficial. So keeping up with the foundations are going to be all of the big pieces around supporting. And then, of course, there's all of the tips and tricks to manage side effects. So nausea, diarrhea, skin issues, extreme fatigue, just kind of feeling like shit
Yeah.
comes with these things. And so we've got long lists of different things. Like my top tip for nausea when going through chemotherapy is those motion sickness bands, the pressure point guys you wear on airplanes. So we do those. Sometimes essential oils, depending on the case. There's all kinds of things. Teas. And then, that's it. I could probably just rattle on forever, but those are the big ones that come to mind in terms of supporting someone through all of this.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say we utilized a lot of those with my fiance. Yeah, the essential oils, especially. We tried the fan. He ended up with more side effects from all the medications they put him on to help manage the nausea. Yeah, and so his first round he used meds, but that was it. All the other rounds he didn't use a single medication. We used all kinds of alternative methods. Cannabis was extremely beneficial and helpful with that, along with the essential oils. We had those going like almost 24/7 for a lot, throughout the entire process and all that kind of stuff. And I will say that we were very fortunate. We actually got treated at Mayo in Phoenix.
Oh, awesome.
And they had a wonderful like connection program where they like provided a lot of support. And, I will say like props to at least the physicians that we worked with, and the nurses that we worked with, because they were open to all of my questions that I had, and all of these like, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? Can we do this? Is this okay? Is this safe? Yeah. So like huge props. Yeah. To them. And a lot of, and they were really honest. Like a lot of answers, they were like, we have no idea. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'd recommend. And we actually have no idea how this impacts anything. So
yeah. And there's a lot of that. Things are still a little bit of a mystery in a lot of things around cancer and what's okay and what's not okay. If you're going through cancer and you do have questions about, is this herbal supplement okay, or is this okay or that okay? Memorial Sloan Kettering has a wonderful herbal kind of naturopathic database. And so you can look up a lot of these things there. There's actually an app. I forget what the app is called. Sorry, we probably don't have time for this, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's super helpful, because I remember, I sent laundry lists of supplements and, all kinds of detoxification stuff, including the sauna, castor oil pack. Like, is this safe? Is this not safe? Like, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I would commonly use, but what are interactions? We did not have that, which, We did
So
our best.
the mobile app is called About Herbs.
Okay.
And if you can also just Google MSK About Herbs or MSK Naturopathic Dictionary. It's all there. And so they'll
Awesome.
tell you it even lists like alternative cancer treatments and things like
Oh.
basically the home remedies that circulate in Facebook groups. Like, is SCAC tea helpful? Is there any data behind that? What about ivermectin? What about fembendazole? Like all of those things you can look up typically in that directory, and it can help you find the things that are science backed. And they try and be respectful. I was surprised. They're not like, oh, this is crap, this is BS. They'll say, well, there's no data in terms of our medical system gold standard of data, but they will give you what is there.
Yeah.
And so,
Which is great. So if someone doesn't want to do chemo, radiation, and or surgery, and I know I'm putting a lot on you with this question as well.
You're good. I can navigate it.
Yeah. Okay, great. What are some other options of things that might support that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah. So, cancer treatment is a big business on both the medical side and the alternative side. So I will say that. And there are definitely predators in this space. So if you're dealing with a cancer diagnosis and you're looking for alternative help, just be aware and be careful. Listen to your spidey sense if you're interviewing people about alternatives. A trustworthy place to find someone who actually knows what they're talking about is it's called Fabno. It's the fellow board for, you can cut this and put it back in. Let me see.
It's good to give people the resources. So if it takes a minute, it's totally fine. Good to have this information.
So the website is oncanp.org, and Fabno is the certification, and it is the Fellow by the American Board of Naturopathic Oncology. These are naturopathic doctors who are actually naturopathic oncologists. That's the Fabno certification that you're looking for. So if you're looking for someone with that, it's the same credential that Dr. Naisha has, and then she has expanded upon that and pulled from every toolbox there is for her own discipline in oncology. But they will be more trustworthy. They may say things that are counter to what I've said because I'm talking through Dr. Naisha's work, and so it's a little different. But that's where you can start for a trusted source. The alternative toolbox of cancer treatment is pretty vast. So a lot of people know about infusions, typically high-dose vitamin C infusion. When you use vitamin C through an IV at a higher dose, it actually breaks down into hydrogen peroxide in the system, which is toxic to cancer cells, but not toxic to healthy cells. So that is the one that a lot of people are familiar with. But there's lots of IVs. There's artesunate, and like the list goes on and on for IV nutrients, IV curcumin, IV ALA, IV, all kinds of things. So infusions are one type of alternative treatment. Hyperbaric oxygen chambers or hyperbaric oxygen therapy, HBOT, is another very common type of alternative treatment. And if you're claustrophobic at all, be careful here. By the way, I should say all of these need to be applied with someone looking at your data because they're not appropriate for everyone. There has been literature indicating too much IVC can cause proliferation in some cancers. There's also evidence that HBOT can cause more angiogenesis, which is new blood supply to feed cancer progression. So all of these need to be within context of your specific data. So you got to work with a physician who knows what they're doing. And this is why it's very dangerous for you to just go find Nancy, the naturopath on the corner who's not trained in oncology, because they're not necessarily going to know the nuance that is required here. So just heads up. So infusions, HBOT, hyperthermia is another one that a lot of people talk about. That's heating the body up to a significant temperature. That's not something that's typically available in the US. It's more of a Germany type situation. There is a company called Verthermia. I looked them up the other day. I thought they were in Santa Barbara, but they're not. They're somewhere else in the United States. they do kind of a as close as we can get in this country version of hyperthermia. What else? There's all kinds of stuff. There's all the off-label drugs. Um, those are interesting to me because everybody and their mother is at Tractor Supply getting ivermectin, trying to take care of their cancer. And I want
Yeah.
everybody to be in the know that ivermectin can cause liver injury. So it's not a good idea to just go do this because the dosages that you have to take for cancer are pretty intense and you need to be followed by a physician who knows what they're doing so you don't damage your liver. What else? Photodynamic therapies, which are kind of the light therapies, and oftentimes those are mixed with the infusions. So they may do an infusion and shine a light on it as it's coming into the body. The list kind of goes on and on. The mistletoe we already talked about, the LDN we already talked about. Trying to think what else. There's so many treatments, and oftentimes they're combined, and it's almost always on top of diet, lifestyle, all of these foundational elements. And then you usually have to take like boatloads of supplements alongside. At least I had to.
Yeah.
And most of my clients do as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's for a short period of time. It's not a forever kind of thing. And you're working on the terrain and all, all the things that we've already talked about. And so I think that's also important to note.
Absolutely.
Also, like, just don't willy-nilly, anyone, cancer, not cancer, like, don't willy-nilly go take some self-medications because there can be a lot of
DIY
damage.
cancer care is dangerous.
Yeah. DIY, a lot of care with things that can be prescription medications. Things can go horribly wrong. So, like,
Yeah.
please, like, just be careful. Maybe consult with someone who actually knows what they're talking about before you just, like, dive right in kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And then let's say someone did have cancer. They went through whatever treatment options they did. What are we doing like long term post care? Like what does that really look like to make sure it doesn't come back to keep this terrain really, really good?
I love that you asked that question. Nobody ever asks me, what do you do after cancer treatment? I always get the prevention question. I love that you asked. It shows me that you are a pretty badass practitioner and you think all the way around the scenario. So thank you.
I mean, if you went through it once, we don't want to go through it again.
Well, and you're also living in it. So you're like, how do we just not do this again?
Yeah.
For sure. So we continue the work that we did in prevention. We avoid the seed oils. We keep the blood sugar balanced. We manage the nervous system, all of that, toxins and whatnot. The other thing is we have to evaluate the terrain to make sure that the same patterns that ended us up in the cancer place don't keep going. And so there's a big, long list of blood work that we use at Soil to Soul, where we're looking at patterns that map to those hallmarks of cancer, like blood sugar regulation, inflammation, oxidative stress, angiogenesis, which is thick, sticky blood, like all of these pieces. But we're also looking at like immune function and vitamin D levels and vitamin A, because when you supplement with vitamin D, you push down vitamin A. Like nobody knows that. Like all of these pieces. And then this is where we can start to detox gently. And so this is where sauna almost always enters the picture. We often can handle some more intense nervous system correction, like cold plunges and some of these things. Whereas before you might have short-circuited trying to get into a cold plunge while you're going through chemotherapy. Be careful. You can overdo it.
Yeah.
But really it's making sure that the terrain is optimal. And so it's getting back to that blood sugar. And I mean, that's the biggest thing because blood sugar, it hits your mitochondria, it hits the angiogenesis, it's the inflammation. It's like, it is a huge piece of the puzzle. And then we're kind of mopping up the damage that was done in the process of treatment. So depends on the cancer, depends on the treatment. If there was a complication in treatment, sometimes we have to be a little bit more delicate. If there is a anatomy change in treatment, then things will be different. So we see a lot of colon resections, and I've had 2 cases with no stomach for stomach cancer. We see cognitive issues and motor changes with brain cancer. We see missing eyes for ocular cancer and tongues and jaws and all kinds of things go missing. The digestive tract is usually what we're dealing with. I see a lot of stomas, short bowels, like changes in fluid balance and being able to absorb nutrients. And So some of what we're doing is teaching people how to optimize their health and wellness in a new body. So that's a big piece of what we're doing. But we're also kind of creating a new identity. So post-cancer, when you finally get to ring that bell and you're done with chemo, or you finally get the no evidence of disease, i.e. cancer-free label, and you tell everyone, it's like, yay, and hugs and tears and woo! And then everybody goes back to work and life and they do their thing and you're left, okay, now what? Like, who am I? Where am I? What do I do? How do I live? How do I eat? What do I want to do for work? Do I want to work? Like, you're left answering and asking all the questions because you have to rebuild your life from scratch. So there's a significant amount of mental and emotional work here. And I think this is actually a gap. If some practitioner, maybe one day I'll do it, could create a program or a way to support people post cancer-free status, that's a huge piece of this puzzle. And then the other thing is, how much stamina do you have to get back in the gym? Are you going to overdo it? Do you need to take it a little bit slower? Maybe we're just walking around the block for the next couple of months and then we're taking it easy. Maybe we're just stretching in our living room, doing some breathing, and then maybe we'll start walking around the block. Like, it really depends on how much damage was done. And then there's things like maintenance meds. So if we're dealing with an estrogen positive cancer and now we're on aromatase inhibitors for the next 10 years, and we're dealing with bone pain and we're dealing with vaginal dryness and sexual dysfunction, and like my husband doesn't understand because it's been a year and he's like, aren't you over it yet? Or whatever it is, like, this is the kind of stuff that we're dealing with. And so we're coaching ladies through like kind of it's like sexual practices using like they're like eggs that can like create little teeny tears inside the vaginal wall to like then recruit collagen to like bring it back together and hopefully self lubricate, and all these non-hormonal things to try and combat some of the side effects from these meds. Or if you're on immunotherapies or like targeted therapies long term, sometimes we're managing nausea even like 2 years out. And so it depends. It really depends on what it is we're doing, but there's a sampling of what we deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. And once again, I will say from, my fiance and watching him during treatment and post treatment, all of those questions came up. We talked about all of those things. We had to evaluate all of those things. And, obviously I was a big support just being a practitioner on more of the terrain. We already live a super clean lifestyle. I mean, we don't have anything in our whole, like doing all that kind of stuff. But it was the identity piece of like, really like, who are you? What do you want to do? Physical capacity and working back up and slowly doing that and taking your time. Yeah, it's such a big piece. So yeah,
Well, and
super
there's
glad
some
that.
self-judgment that comes with, I
Oh yeah.
can't just jump back into an intense gym workout. Like if you used to be a CrossFit person and now you have to take it slow, but you're not like you don't operate on slow. So how do I reconcile these two things? And the
Yeah.
self-judgment and the shame and the like beating yourself up and everything that comes with that. Like it's a head game. It is a mind.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. So awesome. I think that's all like the big stuff. I mean, we could keep talking and want to be mindful of our time here and how long we're going. But any other big pieces of advice or topics that we didn't touch on today that you feel like is really important as kind of like a summation or kind of wrap up?
You asked really good questions. I think we got most of them. I think my biggest message for everyone, cancer or no cancer, is agency, and reestablishing your agency is probably the most important thing you can do for yourself, and for a positive outcome. And if you're able to think through things in the leaning into holistic healing, mind, body, heart, and soul, versus just dealing with the tumor, you're going to have better outcomes because you're going to do the actual work, not just cut the cancer out and then go back to McDonald's. He can't stay healed in a dirty fishbowl. So if we take that fish out and we just put him back in dirty water after he's been through chemotherapy or radiation or whatever it is, you're going to end up in the same place you started. So really think through what you want. And if what you want is to give that to someone else and follow doc's directions and then go back to life, that's your call. It's your call. But I want you to make that decision, not anybody else to make that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are super big on education is power here. Just get the education, learn, listen from different people, different sources, so that you can make the best decision for you, your body, yourself.
Yes.
Knowledge is power. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, amazing. We are going to put all of your links below in the show notes here and just below in the description here. We've got quite a few. You're very active on social media and kind of across the board. So we will link all of that. Anything you want to highlight specifically from any website, social media, anything like that?
Well, my website is where you're going to find me for everything. I do a lot more long form content with articles and things than anything else. And I will actually give you a link. I offer a list of questions when you first get diagnosed to take to your oncologist that are worded in such a way that's more about how can I live longer, not how can I just get this tumor out. So I will leave that. I'll get that to you so you can put that up for your listeners. That might be helpful. But yeah, all things to the website is usually where you can find me.
Okay, amazing. Well, Heather, thank you so much for coming on. This has been amazing, so informative. I learned a whole lot, so I know everyone else will feel the exact same way. So thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. As always, please like, subscribe, follow if it resonates. 5-star reviews really, really, really mean the world to us. And we'll see you next week.